We're live. Guys, welcome to as promised, the live talk with the one, the only Daniel Hirsch, compliance and risk analytics.
You got it,
I
Adam.
got the
Yep.
right word. Daniel, good friend of mine. He's been on the podcast a few times. He's one of the guys that I like to talk to about compliance because he doesn't try to scare you. He tries to help you make some money. Speaking of money, today we're going to talk about something that I think is interesting. It's how to cash in and make sure that you factor in all of the compliance work before you go to sell your practice, right? So today it's going to be action-packed compliance talk from Daniel Hirsch. Daniel, take it away. What do we need to know about selling our practice?
All right. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me. I mean, we could go the scaring route. I wasn't planning on doing that, but everyone else does that, so we'll let everyone else have that route. Okay, so we have a really good topic for today that we can speak about for many hours, but we're going to highlight details that you could take away and use immediately, as well as clarify and articulate how and why for this topic, regardless, right? It's obviously for the buyers, but if you're the seller too, this is going to be really, really valuable for you. So when it comes to compliance, most owners think they start with revenue, right? You always look, Adam, you're always evaluating the company. Don't. Buyers assess risk before growth all the
That's such a
time.
good point. That's such a good
So
point.
they want to make sure, and it's not sexy, right? We know that compliance is one of these things where you got to have it, you got to do it. And when it comes to compliance issues, they don't just lower the value, they change the deal terms. So it's really important that if when you're considering how to approach compliance, it really determines the viability. So compliance issues, they could just stop a deal. Before you even start, it could just completely stop the deal before you even look at financials. And again, they're important, the numbers matter, but the compliance components really will ultimately stop any kind of deal from going forward. It also sets the risk baseline. So buyers assess, from a regulatory exposure first to understand where are the liabilities, where are they, and if you don't know that ahead of time, you don't want a surprise. So obviously, Adam, when it comes to like other components, you could kind of, if it's marketing or operations or HR or front desk, there's a lot of wiggle room involved. But with compliance, you don't want a surprise during a deal. It also drives the diligence scope and cost, right? So if you have weak compliance, that just triggers a deeper dive, a longer investigation, more expensive due diligence. So it just compounds. So you may think, well, you know what? Maybe I'm just gonna kind of squeeze by. I'm not gonna get a lot of questions, and all of a sudden, a certain can of worms is opened up, and all of a sudden, you're not prepared. And it could be not just money, but your time and energy. People have to consider that that is what is going to really impact how you survive a deal, right? So if you're not willing to put in the time, if you're not willing to put in those weekends or evenings to actually answer these questions or go through diligence, it's very important that you have that sustainability. It also signals from an operational discipline standpoint, strong compliance suggests that you have systems and that you have controls, and that regardless of how large you are, they want to know, is there leadership in place?
Hmm.
So one of these things you need to know, how fast is this going to happen? The impact of a clean compliance, it could either accelerate, right? It could accelerate how a buyer feels from a confidence standpoint, or it could shorten the transaction timeline. So I guess, Adam, the main takeaway from this concept overall from entering a transaction is buyers are not looking for perfection. And I say this all the time. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We're not looking for perfection, but they're looking for control and really predictability. That's what they're
Correct.
looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you said that. Because buyers are picky. Buyers, they probably have money.
They
So
should be,
they
right?
have money, right? That's why they're buying. And so
Exactly.
money isn't necessarily the most important thing to them at this stage. It's how can I continue to grow my money risk free, right? And I think about compliance and I think about it's like this little sliver of um it's like got this little sliver of awareness in most of our brains. Like we don't think about compliance very much. At least I don't. Um, but and it's not that big of a deal, right? From the way you've painted it. Like it's just these like very simple routines to keep your practice in order. But it can make a big difference for you whenever you're going to evaluate your practice because um, it's becoming more and more apparent to me that uh, essentially buyers when they come in, they want to be able to buy an asset that prints money for them without them having to solve any more problems or have any more headaches because they already have headaches. And if you don't have a good compliance program, then they're basically buying a headache, and that devaluates the business. So,
It's true. And speaking about headaches from a valuation standpoint, or even like a deal structure standpoint, you could have two companies, my company, your company, we could have the exact same EBITDA, but they'll have very different valuations based on the compliance maturity. So really it's you don't want to discount uncertainty. So when it's, the cleaner compliance profile, it's built into what they're looking for. And your point of they just want to invest, right? Investors are looking to invest to grow money. That's
mhm.
very true. But the when it comes to really determining how much the purchase price is paid, the compliance strength often decides whether proceeds are either, it could be cash, it could be deferred, you could
Mhm.
have tighter covenants, you could have long survival periods, you could have
Totally.
broader reps, right? All these things impact not just a number, right? It impacts the actual deal. It could drive escrow size or duration. So all these things that people, if you're a seller, you're not really considering. You're just like looking, am I going to get that multiple? And the answer is, hold on. It really depends on what you've done on the front end that will pay dividends, I think, when you're going through that transaction. Compliance uncertainty also, it makes earnouts really hard to achieve, and it's easier for buyers to kind of dispute it. But it's all about leverage also. So when you're thinking about this, when you're going through that process of how are you leveraging when you're going through a negotiation, the sellers with really strong compliance programs or just an awareness of their compliance, that you can push back on
Right.
just assumptions and restrictive terms. So that's your leverage that a lot of times people are thinking the numbers don't lie. But when
Mhm.
you have a process in place and you could prove that, hey, by the way, this is repeatable, this is something that could be sustained and grow because it's protected. That's ultimately what it's going to differentiate between you and someone down the street also when you're going to market.
That's exactly where I was going. Like what a way to easily differentiate yourself, right? So if you're gearing up for a sale, it's like, you know, most of the people that are in this group, they're 1 to 3 clinics, maybe, five to seven clinics is kind of like that mid tier, but we probably don't have our compliance in order as much as we probably should. Like, let's be honest.
And that's
And
okay. And that's okay. The truth is, people that have known me for over a decade, they know it's a process. It's not just the goal to be, hey, I'm compliant, I'm not
right,
compliant. It's you got to start somewhere, and you
right,
have to show. It's even with auditing, right? I could care less what you did. It's what are you doing today?
right.
Are you showing something meaningful to say, hey, you know what? I'm identifying this, and I'm going to make sure that, again, from what people look at it, due diligence. You mentioned documentation, maybe, or coding and billing. For consistency or red flags, you have to be able to hold up through scrutiny. So how do you do that? How are you describing your CPT utilization or
Mhm.
time based coding accuracy? Not just coding. What about your time based coding? Are they accurate? How often are you billing reevaluations? Right? Are you just doing it on the clock every 30 days? The answer is, well, I hope not. It really depends, but you have to really be able to describe and defend what you're doing, even from like a documentation integrity standpoint. Are they reviewed? How are you going through this for credentialing? I think HR, I always get nervous. Credentialing, supervision, licensure, not just to rattle off a million things, but supervision rules. These really, really matter. Are you following? I've seen deals that they were at the 11th hour, they did not close because supervision issues,
Mhm.
where you may think, okay, well, that's not a big deal, but it depends. What state are you in? Are you following your rules? Do you understand what those rules are? Um, when it comes to payer mix and contract terms, those are really boilerplate. It's not that complicated. Any lawyer can pick that out. but you want to make sure, you know, is it sustainable? Is there exposure or a long-term exposure to unfavorable clauses? You want to know. And to your point, if you have a small mom and pop clinic, you want to know what that is. What are you going into? What are you offering before you actually, open that door and say, okay, I'm ready. Buyers also test whether written policies are actually followed and
Mm,
operational. I can tell you, I do this often. You'll ask, well, where is it? How does it work? And can you explain? So the process of what you say you have, is that reality, or is that just, what I asked ChatGPT to quickly create
yeah.
something for me? That's not going to fly, because you have to pass the scrutiny of, hey, by the way, I'm not just going to read it, but I'm going to say, let me interview some staff. Do they understand it? Do they understand how it flows in practice? I know I mentioned supervision, but it also goes to unlicensed individuals too. Techs, aides, that also is heavily regulated. I could tell you, Adam, the do not get on that list, OIG list. From an investigation standpoint, it is always with aides and techs, and it's
Mm,
always with unlicensed individuals, either claiming to be, or it's from just a dollar standpoint. The penalties are significant for these types of cases where people are abusing certain positions. So it's one of these things, again, goes back to policies. Do you even understand how the workflow is with certain unlicensed individuals? Also, with maybe, are you over relying on a certain payer or a referral source, or based on where your location is? So all these things really, really matter, that you should be saying, okay, well, what is my percentages? And I'm sure you go over this with some of your clients, where you want to know, are you not bulletproof, but are you able to sustain, let's say your major referral all of a sudden retires. What are
right.
you going to do about that? How does that
Hmm.
work? How does that impact your value?
The number that I've heard is 5 years, right? So it's like whenever if you're 5 years out from thinking about selling, if your thoughts are that you might sell within the next 5 years, like you probably should start working on this stuff today. And I've never really considered the compliance aspect, but usually when I recommend it, what we look at is like more around the financials and getting your contracts in order and all those things. But I would assume compliance is a big part of that too, right? Like really that 5 year audit process where you're really just kind of going through your practice, making sure you're buttoned up on the compliance side. When practices come to you and ask you like, when should I start thinking about this? Like, what's the timeline? Like, is that 5 year mark kind of what you recommend, or do you recommend something different?
It's interesting. It's a good question. I typically don't give an actual year or time. It's really based on, it's almost like when you evaluate your patient, right? You're automatically thinking, how am I getting this patient to discharge?
Mm,
So when you're opening up, what does the end look like? And it doesn't mean that can't be 5 years from now, or 20 years from now, or 6 months from now. The answer is, you should have a plan in place. And, you know, I'm in the compliance world, which is great, because I'm able to say, you know what, this may be meaningful to me, but it may not be meaningful to you or someone down the street. And the answer is this appropriate for you? That's the question you always have to ask. And you're not being compared to the publicly traded companies. You're being compared to you and what is reasonable for your practice. And if you can do that meaningfully, that could be a simple 2 year process. That could be 6 months. And it's always, and it goes back to what I said before, it is, if you're not taking something, a meaningful step now, that's the challenge. And that could be
mm,
simply saying, you know what, I need to open communication lines. I need to be able to have some anonymous reporting. You know what? That's going to cost me about $100 a year. Why not? Why not just do that? Or I need to audit my charts. Let me do that. Or maybe use AI to be doing that. There's great tools right now. There's great technology that can do this for you. Or it could just simply be a gap analysis or a IT risk assessment. All these things, there's so many great things to leverage that you could apply to operations. And traditionally, I think, Adam, a lot of people, to your point, kind of like shied away from compliance to say, it's annoying. It
yeah.
doesn't really help me. It's not practical for what I'm trying to do. And that was true for the last 20, 30 years. It wasn't effective. And that's why I'm here talking to you, to let people know that, you know what, it really should be. It should be integrated with operations to say, you know what, where's my risk? Is this appropriate for me? And how do I stay within the boundaries? And
Mm,
this is what I need to do to actually make an impact, to add value. And if you could do that, you know, from a 5 year standpoint, you could forget EBITDA. You'll be in a really great position to be able to say, you know what, year over year growth, that will speak for itself. But when it comes to how knowledgeable your staff are, all it takes is one weak link to, have a breach. And the idea is, are you educating your staff? It's really easy to do that. You could go on MedBridge, you can go on a lot of different, platforms to get training, but are you, right? Are you actually doing it? Are you signing up those employees on just basic things for your practice? And again, I know buyers are really more concerned with like that unknown risk than really just the managed risk or last minute fixes. That just kind of reduces the trust. So compliance doesn't kill the deals, but surprises always will. So you don't want that. Hey, by the way, we're closing on Tuesday, and the answer is no, we're not. Look what we just
Yeah.
found, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So
Super cool, man. I really appreciate the time.
yeah, of course.
We're gonna make these short, action-packed 15 minutes. We're gonna do 5 episodes of this, right? And so next week, same time, we're gonna be talking about cash pay services. So before you start launching your cash pay services, what are some of the compliance considerations that you might want to think about? Daniel, thank you for your time. If you're listening on the podcast, check out the show notes. Daniel has a lead magnet in there for you. Like there's some free resources there. I'm going to also drop it if you're in the Facebook group. I'm going to drop it in the comments below. Check out Daniel if you want to have a conversation with him about compliance. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Adam.